Okay, so let's look at what each of the individual parts do on the graph. So my A value is my amplitude, and we use the absolute value of it. My A value will give me my vertical stretch, a vertical compression, or my vertical reflection in the x-axis if there's a negative. The sign here is the trig function. New is this B value. So this B value will do my horizontal stretches, compressions, or reflections. So we talked about how there could be some horizontal ones. So this is going to be my horizontal stretch, my horizontal compression, or my horizontal reflection, this time in the y-axis if there's negative. My H is my phase shift, left and right. And my K is my vertical translation, up and down. To figure out the amplitude, I do the max minus the min divided by 2. To figure out my midline or my K value, I do the max plus the min divided by 2. What's going to change now is the period of the graph. The period of the graph may not always be 360 degrees. This B value will change that. It will either stretch it or compress it, or reflect it. So how do we figure out the period? So if I have a sine x graph or a cos x graph, the period can be found by doing 360 degrees divided by my B value. If I have a tan x graph, the period is 180 divided by B. So that's the important difference. Sine and cosine is 360 divided by B, and tan will be 180 divided by B. Okay, so let's put that to work. So what are the transformations? So we're going to go left to right. We're going to do the 3, the 2, the 45, and the minus 3. So the 3 would be a vertical stretch of 3. The 2 would be, again, brackets are going to lie. So instead of being a vertical or a horizontal stretch, which you might think, because the brackets are lying, it's actually a horizontal compression of 2. Brackets still lying. We're going to do a phase shift. Left 45 degrees. And we're going to do the vertical translation down 3. The period can be found by doing 360 divided by B. So I'm going to do 360. I'm going to divide it by 2, which means one cycle will now finish in 180 degrees. It means that I will have 2 cycles in 360 degrees. The amplitude is the number in front of the function, and it's the absolute value of it. So it means the amplitude will be 3 up from the midline and 3 below the midline. The midline is also this value here, so that means the midline will be at minus 3. Let's look at this one. This will be a vertical compression of 3. I have 1/5 in here, which means I'm actually going to stretch it. Remember, brackets lie. So I'm going to have a horizontal stretch of 5. Bracket still lying. I'm going to have a phase shift, right 60. And I'm going to have a vertical translation, up 10. I need to figure out the period, but it's a tan graph, so I need to make sure that I'm actually looking at what the function is. So that means I'm going to do 180 divided by b. So I'm going to do 180 divided by 1 over 5, which means it's going to be 900 degrees. So it's going to take 900 degrees to finish one cycle. I want the amplitude, so I look, it's 1/3, but it's not. It's a tan graph. If you remember, tan graphs go off infinitely in both directions. So while this is a vertical compression of 3, the amplitude itself is a little bit funny with tan. It's actually infinity. Hey, I'm going to put a little star next to this one. And actually next to this one. Just to remind ourselves that you cannot have a number sitting right next to the x. There has to be brackets in between them. So for this function and actually for the next function, I need to factor this out before I can actually state the transformation. So I'm going to have y is equal to 1 over 10 cos, bracket, I'm going to pull out the minus 3, and I have x, and now I have x plus, well I'm going to take 120 and divide it by 3, so I have x plus 40 and minus 7. So now I can state those transformations. So I have a vertical compression of 10. I now have, with this negative, a horizontal reflection in the y-axis. I have a horizontal compression, remember brackets lie, of 3. I have a phase shift, left 40, and I have a vertical translation, down 7. It's a cosine graph, so I would do 360 divided by b, or 360 divided by 3. While it's got a negative, it's important that the period is also a positive number, so we do not include the negative. Really, we're using the absolute value of that. So that means that it takes 120 degrees to do one cycle. And the amplitude is 1/10 because it's a cosine graph and not a tan graph. So I get the actual amplitude from here. We look at this one again, the number sitting right next to the x, so I need to factor it out. So I'm going to take the 1/2 out, and I get x minus, and I'm going to get 360, because 180 divided by 1/2 is 360, and then I have plus 6. So now I can state the transformations. So in this case, I have a vertical reflection in the x-axis. I'm going to have a vertical stretch of 4. I have the 1/2 lying, so that's a horizontal stretch of 2. Brackets still lying. I have a phase shift, right 360 degrees. And I have a vertical translation, up 6. Again, it's a sine graph, so my period is 360 divided by b, 360 divided by 1/2, or 720 degrees for one cycle. I'm looking for the amplitude, it's the A value, but again, I ignore the negative. Amplitude is a positive number, so my amplitude is 4. If I look at these, it wants me to do a cosine equation that has undergone these following transformations. So we're going to go up 6, left 80 degrees. There's a vertical reflection, vertical compression of 8, and a horizontal stretch of 6. So I'm going to put all these together. So I have a vertical reflection, which means there's a negative. Compression vertically will make it 1 over 8. I've been told that the function will be cosine. There's a horizontal stretch of 6, but because brackets lie, it's going to be 1 over 6 inside the brackets. And going left 80, so I'm going to write it as x plus 80. And I'm going to go up 6. If I try the next one, I'm going to do y equals. So I have a vertical stretch of 6. My cos graph, big brackets. I've got a compression horizontally of 5. So I'm going to actually just write it as 5, but there's also a horizontal reflection, so I'm going to put the negative in. I have right 50, so I'm going to write minus 50. And I go down 3.